Well, joining me now to discuss all this and more is former White House Chief of Staff and Senior Advisor at Bondi Partners, Mick Mulvaney. Mick, great to have you with us on the program this week. So much to talk about. More and more people in the media are finally beginning to talk about Biden and his physical decline and all the things that keep happening on the world stage. Now, a little bit later in the program, I'm going to show more of what happened at the D-Day commemorations. But Mick Mulvaney, when you see things like the president's odd behavior at massively important events, like the 80th anniversary of D-Day, including appearing to fall asleep, being confused about where he was going when he got out of his car, and a lot of other stuff, what does this tell you about, A, his ability to get through the next debate, but also what other world leaders are thinking about who's at the helm of the U.S.?
Yeah, James, that second point is especially important now here on the as we go into the weekend of the 80th anniversary of the D-Day invasions. Keep in mind, the day that Joe Biden left for France, the Wall Street Journal, a very prominent newspaper here in the United States, ran a front page story about what happens behind closed doors with Joe Biden. And it was a scathing attack on his capacity, on his ability to essentially do the job. And the Democrats came out absolutely howling about it and trotted out all sorts of comments from other world leaders saying how capable that Joe Biden was. It sort of provide a balance to this Wall Street Journal accusation. And then you see what you saw today at Normandy, which was stunning, on the stage with Macron, and clearly just not in the right mind to be president of the United States. So it's going to be a bigger issue as we move to the debates. Keep in mind, we're less than a month away now from the first debate. And I fully expect Joe Biden to be capable that evening because there's ways to manage his capacity on short terms. There's drugs you can use, et cetera. Maybe we'll talk about that before we get to the debate. But all eyes of the world, not just of the U.S., will be on Joe Biden, not only just at the debate here at the end of this month, but from now until the next election, because the man is clearly slipping. There's evidence of it almost every single day.
Well, Mick, I mean, you've been chief of staff to Donald Trump. You know what it's like inside a White House. You know how a president will be, in public versus in private. But where is this great, with it, hyper-competent, doing quadratic equations in his head, Joe Biden, that they say, behind closed doors, he's sharp as a tack? Why don't we see this out on screen?
Yeah, because that Joe Biden never existed. Look, he's not always been, 120 years old. He has been younger and been more capable, there's no question, but no one ever accused Joe Biden of doing quadratic equations. I mean, no one, he was able to find the door by himself to get out of a room. At this point, we're not really sure that's by himself. But no, Joe Biden, I think another senator years ago described him as one of the most famously stupid members of the Senate. And I think that was another Democrat who said that. So no, listen, you don't have to be a genius to be the president of the United States. There's no question about that, but you have to be there. You have to be on the job. You have to be competent to do it. And I think the things like what we saw today on the stage at Normandy are going to continue to raise the questions as to whether or not Joe Biden can do the job. Look, this is how it boils down, and this is how I explain it to people in this country. See if this resonates. Since y'all speak English most of the time as well, it comes down to the 4 I's. The 2024 election for Joe Biden is the 4 I's. It's inflation, immigration, Israel, and incapacity. He's going to have to figure out a way to deal with all 4 of those things if he's going to expect to be reelected.
Well, yeah, I think that's right. And also, I think if my old high school math teacher is watching, he'd be saying, I'm not accusing you of doing quadratic equations either. But we'll put that aside here. And on those 4 I's, it would seem that's part of the reason why Donald Trump's polls seem to be continuing to go well, despite that hush money nonsense verdict, which I think most people have dismissed. But we're seeing some really interesting stuff here. In Georgia, a Quinnipiac poll has Trump up 49 to 44. In Michigan, 48 to 47. That's quite close. But even Virginia, which was not supposed to be a battleground state, and I don't think the Republicans have taken that since 2008, maybe, and Joe Biden won that by around a 10% margin. That's in play. It seems like there's some real momentum happening here. It's what we say in Australia. We say when the swing is on, it's on. Is the swing on?
I think it is, and the question is it too early? Keep in mind, we're still about 5 months away from the election, and we've got these debates in the intervening months. I really don't believe those Virginia numbers. Virginia is such a Democrat state, but we'll continue to watch that closely. That would be real news if Virginia is a swing state. But I did see data, and I've talked to members of Congress in both New Mexico and Arizona, and they say the numbers out there feel real. I think the most recent polling had Donald Trump up by 5 points in both of those swing states. To sort of further buttress that, this weekend he's in Arizona and New Mexico. Now, James, I think we're coming into wintertime, or actually you're in the middle of winter down there. It's the summertime in the desert Southwest. It's 115 degrees Fahrenheit. I can't do the math in my head, but I think that's in the low 40s. Maybe
it's
the
hot.
mid-40s in Celsius. It's really, really, really hot. And for a candidate to go to New Mexico and go to Arizona in June, in the middle of summer, means that they think they've got some momentum behind them. They think they can sort of make hay while the sun shines, if you will, in those states. So clearly the Trump campaign has seen some things in the data in those states that they really like. So I agree with you. The momentum may swing back and forth a couple times between now and November, but right now it does feel like it's going Donald Trump's way.
Yeah, but then there's also other sort of things that are happening if you dive down deeper into the numbers. I mean, you look at the primaries in New Mexico and Iowa. Now, I know the nominations are all set, but at the same time, GOP turnout down 40%, Democrat turnout 50%. One of the things that I'm talking to people in America about, a lot of people are saying, well, I can't believe this is my choice. Is there a lack of enthusiasm for this race kind of in the broad middle that's making this really about the enthusiasts on, the extremes of both ends? And is that reflected in these primary numbers?
I think it's reflected in the primary numbers, and it may be what's driving some of the Trump momentum in the polls. Keep in mind, if the middle part of the country sort of says, you know what, I don't like either of these folks, and that sort of is reflected in the primary turnout, especially the numbers you mentioned, I think, were from New Mexico. It's a huge jump, 40% for the Democrats, for Republicans, almost 50% for the Democrats. Those are huge numbers over 4 years ago. If that's really the middle of the country sort of sitting this one out, and it's always hard to extrapolate from a primary to a general, but if that's what's happening, that may be why you're seeing Trump do better and better in these early polls in these swing states, because his base is more fired up for him than Joe Biden's base is fired up for him. Again, Joe Biden is never counting on his base to be excited about him. He's excited about his base being against Donald Trump. But right now, again, the polling data would suggest that that's just not happening.
Now, Mick, finally, one more little wild card in here. The quest to settle on a vice presidential pick for Donald Trump is ramping up, and according to the AP, he's started putting out vetting forms to potential candidates, sending out paperwork to a list of contenders, including North Dakota Governor Doug Burgum, Marco Rubio from Florida, J.D. Vance from Ohio, big name to watch there, Tim Scott, your friend from South Carolina, whom we've talked about, New York's Elise Stefanik, and Trump's 2016 rival turned cabinet member Ben Carson. Who are you liking among these picks, and where do you think he's going to wind up going, if I can be so bold?
See, we don't really have betting markets on this in the United States. I know they have them in the UK. If they have them in Australia, I'm giving you the winner right now. I'm telling you it's going to be Ben Carson. And here's why. I think so, and here's why. There's a bunch of reasons. You could go down the list of all the weaknesses the other folks have, how they don't add anything to the campaign. Listen, they're great candidates. Tim Scott would be a great vice president. That's not my point. The one element I think that Ben Carson has that none of the other 6 people on the list have is that I don't think Ben Carson wants to be president. I don't think he wants to run for president. Keep in mind, if Donald Trump wins in November, he's automatically term limited under our Constitution, which means that the 2028 election effectively starts the next day after the 2024 election. And I don't think Donald Trump wants anybody in that White House running for president on day one of his second term. That's why I keep coming back again and again to Ben Carson. They know each other. They like each other. He's trustworthy. He's loyal. He's a brilliant guy. So, and again, all of them would make really good vice presidential candidates. That's not my point. My point is I think Ben Carson's got that one thing, that one element that the other ones can't bring to the table, and that's why my money right now is on Ben Carson.
Ben Carson, that's a great pick there. Mick Mulvaney, he's an impressive character. I think he's also a surgeon as well, a medical doctor. So we can put that in the bank. Maybe Ben Carson. Well, we'll see. Thank you so much for your time, Mick Mulvaney, for your insights as always.